everybody. I'm retired Sergeant Spiller Crenshaw with the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office. Well, no longer with them, I'm retired. But we've assembled this panel here today to discuss, some of the lived experiences of minorities in law enforcement. Here we have an excess of 80 years of law enforcement between our panelists. What I'm going to do is ask them to introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about their background, and then we'll go into asking a few questions, have them respond to the questions. And if you all have any questions, you feel free to ask as well. Okay? So we'll start on either end.
Okay.
Don't make me hard.
I'm Daryl Burton, and I am currently the Police Academy Coordinator over in San Mateo County, right here at San Mateo. I started my law enforcement career, I want to say, in 2003 in Michigan. I was a probation officer, case management worker out there in Michigan and Wayne County. That's like the Detroit area and beyond that. And then I also have an interesting eclectic background where I'm a clinician as well. So I got my master's degree after I graduated from undergrad. Got my master's degree in social work, but I focused on clinical services. Left Michigan, moved back out here to California, was doing clinical work out here in California, then went back over to probation and did various jobs there and worked on a couple of special teams and with a couple of special units. And then left probation, moved to Oregon, and worked on a special unit out in Oregon with the Salem Police Department and the county, where I was teamed up with the co-response team for crisis intervention training. So my team, we were pretty much the first team to kind of start doing that over in that area, so we really grew the program. I was the clinician, my partner was the law enforcement officer, so we responded to everything: suicide, hostage situations, anything dealing with emotionally disturbed people or people going through psychosis. Left Oregon, came back here to California, and I assumed the position over at the academy as leading that. So I have an eclectic background, probably give you a different perspective of some things because I can talk cop, but I can also talk clinical as well from a social perspective. So that's me in a nutshell.
Good afternoon. My name is Visel Cagado. I've been with law enforcement now. I'm a retired probation officer with Domini County Probation. I was with the department for 25 years. I started out at the juvenile hall. I worked my way up to the probation officer. I've worked all facets of the department. I was juvenile hall, worked home supervisions. I worked at adults, sex offenders, domestic violence, gangs, you name it, I've done it. My last unit was with the internal affairs investigation, background investigation. My first language is Spanish, so I was bilingual. I had all the Spanish-speaking caseloads. What else? Before I did that, I was in pharmaceutical sales, so I was legal sales. And the reason I changed careers is because I have an identical twin. She's now retired. She was the deputy chief for San Mateo County. And a lot of people get mistaken, and when they see me, they think it's her, but no, I don't mean that. I'm the other twin. But it was a great career, and thank you for coming and giving us this opportunity to share what law enforcement is all about.
Awesome. Now, how do I go after these two, right? My name is Tanzanika Carter. I'm the assistant sheriff in San Francisco. I've been in law enforcement now for 27 years. I started out as a deputy in San Francisco back in 1996. I stayed there for 3 years as a deputy, and then I went over to BART. If you ever rode BART, I was on those trains for over 20 years, about 21 years, and that's where I did the stint of my career. I was a field training officer, a field training sergeant, the chaplain coordinator, part of the Hoskins negotiation team, and criminal investigations. So then I promoted up to being a lieutenant, and I was the zone commander for the Richmond Contra Costa area. Contra Costa has the Richmond area and the Pittsburgh area, very two different areas that I was over. And from there, I thought I was retiring from law enforcement when I did retire from BART, and then I came over as the assistant sheriff in San Francisco. So I've been there in this job as the assistant sheriff for 3 years now. I manage the admin department or division, the field division, and what is it? Field admin, there's one more, but I've just moved over to projects. It just happened this week, so now I'll be over like getting more technical things. There's a thing called TrackStar and body-worn cameras. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, it's a great gig being the assistant sheriff, which is the third in charge after the sheriff and the undersheriff. I will be next, first black female to be in that position. So we can talk a little bit about that later. And I think that's it.
Okay, so we'll get into the questions. I've given them approximately 30 questions or so to review, and I told them we're not gonna touch all of them. So I just wanted them, what we'll start off with is, what do you think the biggest challenge law enforcement is facing today? What do you think that is?
So I think one of the major things that's going on with everybody's department is the staffing issue. There's a shortage of staffing in many departments, and it's for a lot of different reasons. Low morale. It's because people don't feel like law enforcement is a noble profession anymore, especially after George Floyd happened when he was killed by a police officer. Many people decided they did not want to be police officers anymore. And so we lost a lot of good people that would have been great for our department because of that. And we've been kind of fighting back, trying to let people know that we're here, that we want them in law enforcement, but the staffing is an issue because of those type of things.
What recruitment efforts are being made to recruit more black and brown candidates in law enforcement? Daryl? I'm sorry.
I would say not enough is being done, just honestly. Not enough is being done. I'll give you a perfect example, not relative to here, but before I moved from here and I was going to Oregon and I ended up working down there, my initial reasoning for going down to Oregon was I was going to be running a portion of their academy down there. They're called DPSST, Department of Public Safety Training. And so I would have been the only African American person in the whole state of Oregon that would be in a position of teaching at the academy and holding a position such as that. So I say that to say that you mean to tell me you couldn't find any other candidates, no other people of color that are worthy enough to be able to teach officers that around the whole state? Come on, you know, and so it's things like that, and it's reflected in the people in the officers too, though, right? So if I don't see more people that potentially look and reflect me, and I can see myself in them, psychologically that creates a hindrance for a lot of people. There's always going to be those go-getters who's going to defy the odds. There's always going to be a few of those. But the majority, a large majority of people, they need to see themselves reflected in the positions that are being presented to them. And so that's just an example from another state that I can provide you with. They just don't do enough. And when I bring up the question, because I brought up the question, I'm like, you got, like, what's going on when I was in the departments? And they're like, well, we just, nobody wants to do this. So I'm like, well, I don't believe that. I believe there's a lot of people of color that want to work in law enforcement, would like to work in law enforcement. But if they don't see themselves reflected in the hierarchy of things, it's kind of hard for them to make that hurdle, to make that jump. So that's just one example on my end. They're just not doing enough.
Anybody else have a
Yeah,
perspective?
I'm gonna jump on that too, because it's very important, especially as women of color. In law enforcement, as we know, it's mostly men, right? So it's not only important that we get people of color, but also women and women of color in law enforcement is very, very important. And to Daryl's point, people don't know what they can do until they see us in some of these key positions. Women don't know, people of color don't know that they can be part of law enforcement until we come in to say, yes, you can. And so we are the voice that, and advocates for those who may not have known that they can be part of law enforcement. But it really starts at an early age, because a lot of times, by the time people are 18 years old, they may have done things that would have disqualified them later in life. And so they don't have the mentors like others may have, who have kept them on the path, to get a job like this. And so for me, I do a lot of the hiring. And I always say, I'm not looking for perfect people, but people perfect for the job. Meaning you don't have to be perfect. You can make mistakes. You just have to be able to own up to that. There has to be some time and distance in between it. And we need to work with people who have a heart of community. And also, I always say this too, you still gotta be able to handle business. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. But you have to have a heart for the community. It has to be a balance. And so we have to show that by being in these key positions. When people come to me, I always tell them, look at our website. Look at all of our websites. If you don't see you there, you should question that. We should be interwoven into the departments that we are serving in. And if we're not, then that's an issue. And so for us in our sheriff's department, we have, I just brought some for scholarships, and it's not just for black folks, but I'm part of this group called the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, and we give out scholarships for people who want to get into criminal justice related fields. It's important that we pour into our young people at an early age. So that's one thing that we could all do, right? Is pour into the people and then mentor them. And we don't do enough of that, with time and everything like that. But because it's important, we need to make time for people who are who look like us, so that they have an opportunity to be part of this wonderful, noble profession.
And there's so much opportunities for women in law enforcement. We don't see much women in the higher position. We see a lot of women line staff. But there's so much opportunity in law enforcement, and many aspects, FBI, whatever you name it, there's a lot of opportunities. But also, women today, we need to work together and mentor each other and help each other move up in the ranks. Even also having the men in the department, because it's always the men with the good old boys and the women on their own, and men don't want to work with women. So we have to prove ourselves, but that doesn't mean we have to act like macho and be masculine. The key is to being yourself and doing your job and being a professional, and let them know that we can do our job too. We can hold on, because a lot of men don't want to work with women. Well, no, I'm just saying, if we're gonna sit here and talk about this, we have to be honest about this. Because, they just feel that we can't hold our weight, and we have to show them that we can. Because if you look at history and statistics, you see that women are better at de-escalating the problems than men are. And we talk, we communicate professionally, we show compassion, we show empathy, and they're willing to work with us. But then we have the opposite, where men don't want to deal with women, they want to deal with them, and that's okay, right? So it's just a lot of things that we have to teach the community and law enforcement, our community, Leo, to how would I say it? It's to work together and change the impression of the communities of law enforcement officers. I'm getting off the track. But anyway.
No. That was absolutely on the track.
Because the community has this bad opinion or views of what law enforcement is all about. And I blame the media for a lot of it. Because when we see a lot of things that they show us on the media, they show bits and pieces, but they don't show the big picture. So right there, the community's already tainted about what went on, but they don't know the full story. So media, I feel, has the problem with the issues that we're having today with law enforcement. Not saying all law enforcement, because the community also has a problem too, because we also have to learn how to, when the police say stop, that means stop. You know, and so, I don't know. So,
No, that wasn't on track, that was on track.
you know, the other thing I was to say, how many police officers today you can talk to and say, what is your main role? And the first thing they say is to enforce the law. And that's a narrow part of our role. Our role today, it should be meant, it should be taught, it should be enforced that we treat people with dignity and respect. And when you take that dignity and respect from them, they're gonna fight you to hold on to that. That's all they have is their dignity and respect. So if you go out there and you act macho and, you know, disrespect them, of course you're gonna have pullback. But then again, both sides, even if they are, they need to just follow because they see what's been happening, you know. So,
And that's, no, that actually segues into question number 7 that you all have there. What experiences and skills are necessary to have a successful career in law enforcement career? And how can more opportunities be created for minorities to acquire these critical attributes? You know, what training is necessary and what training is provided at academies and whatnot?
Well, you said a whole lot there. I was going to say earlier just a little bit though about the culture, and if we can segue into training, because in the culture of law enforcement, we know it's a male-dominated type of mentality. And to your point, there's an initiative called the 30 by 30 initiative, where we're trying to get more women into law enforcement. And the research, not just us, but the research shows that if you have 30% of women in your law enforcement agencies, de-escalations are better, right? Uses of force go down. Victims actually will talk to us because we're women, and so we'll be able to solve more crimes because there's more women in law enforcement. So there's a lot of positives to having more women in law enforcement, not just because we say it, but because the research shows it to be true. So I wanted to say that in regards to that. And it's about the culture change. It's a shifting that is very slow. It's like the iceberg. You don't see all that's going under the underbelly, and it's going to take a while for things to change. But we are on a really good trajectory with our women leadership conferences, with the 30 by 30 initiative. It's just moving at a slow pace because of the foundation of what law enforcement was about. I mean, since we are saying minorities in law enforcement, we have to remember law enforcement didn't start with black folks being in it or women. It was all white men. And so we're coming on a foundation where it was not meant for us. So we have to come in it and really claw at changing how people think about law enforcement. So to your point, in regards to training, there has to be cultural competency training. There has to be some kind of competency, cultural training for us to understand one another. I have to have that too, so I can go into other communities and be, like, as you said, treat people with dignity and respect. We have to know that sometimes black folks, we do talk with our hands. I'm not being adversarial. And so I don't want you to throw me down just because I talk passionately. But unless you know that about me and about the cultural, it could be an issue. So we definitely need that type of training. You know, we have our basics. You can talk about this more about the use of force training and de-escalation training, but there definitely should be competency training in there so that we can learn more about each other's culture.
Do you have anything to add in regards to training?
Things have gotten a lot better over the years. I've always said that for sure California, and I travel a lot and I talk at a lot of, train at a lot of conferences and things like that, and I'm very observant and I sit and listen a lot. Some states, a lot of states are like still, they got a long ways to go. They got a long ways to go in terms of pushing the threshold and bringing things current to this time of like the word de-escalating and working with people that may be emotionally impaired, or working with certain individuals, or even having people of color within their departments. So we've come a long way in that effect. California definitely, I would say, is in the upper echelon of the states in the country, but we still have so far to go. Still got a long ways to go, but we are definitely ahead of a lot of places in terms of that. The training is changing. It's even changing at the academy level. I could tell you, I've been working in some capacity with the academy since 2010, I want to say. And I can remember when we didn't have learning domains, or just think of them as chapters, learning domains. We didn't have learning domains on mental health. We didn't have learning domains on officer wellness. That stuff wasn't even talked about when I first started teaching. And so within the last 5 years or so, I would say that there's been a big push for that, and especially cultural diversity. Like, we have a whole LD, so it's getting done. And it's just a shame that it had to be kind of legislated and regulated for that to have to happen. You would have loved for it to be that way, but it is what it is, and they have it now within the curriculum. And so they're getting it, because a lot of the information that they're receiving in that curriculum, a lot of my recruits never knew about. They don't know anything about redlining, the history of that, or segregation. Only thing they know about is Dr. Martin Luther King. That's always the go-to person, right? If you want to try to be culturally competent. But there's so much more to everyone's community that they need to be familiar with, because these are going to be the communities that they're serving. So things have changed. It's a long way to go still, but in that capacity, things are changing for that. I did see in 7 as well that, what skills are necessary to have a successful law enforcement career, and how can we create those opportunities. One of the biggest things that I try to enforce with my recruits is to be human. Be human. Most of them, I would like to say all, but I'm leaving some room for error here. Most of them, and then most people get into law enforcement because it's a job of service, a service to humanity. We see that we can somehow create a greater life for someone and for the communities that we serve. Somewhere throughout the line, a lot of times when people leave the academy and they go on their career, they lose that. They lose their why. And when you lose that, you lose the humanity of community, you lose the humanity of people. It hardens you, because the career can harden you and make you cynical and make you jaded. It has a tendency to do that. So what I try to do at my level with the recruits is I'm constantly trying to imprint in their head, why are you doing this? Remember this, because it's that why that keeps your butt out of trouble, one, and it keeps you invigorated with the job. It keeps you loving the job. If you know your why and you're making a difference in helping someone's life, then it stays that way. And those are the things that I think that the skill sets and the things that are necessary that they have to be successful.
So what type of applicants are you all receiving now in the academy, or that just applied for law enforcement? What's kind of the makeup? Because I know generationally people are taught things differently and do things differently, and this generation of prospective law enforcement applicants, what are you seeing in them when they initially apply?
Well, for me, because I deal with the hiring part of it, so I see people, that we get some young folks, but I'll be very honest, a lot of times, especially early on, a lot of the people of color were not making it because of drugs, right? And that was an issue. And again, it starts because younger, if they were involved with that, there's issues there. So that is a disqualifying factor. It could be And a lot of times when I talk to people now, I just tell them blanketly, just tell the truth. People don't understand, when we do a background, we do a very thorough background. And people may have done things in their past, and it may not have been even anything bad, you know what I'm saying, crazy. But because of shame, or they'll never find out because I did it when I was, 18, I just won't put it on the application. And that's deceptive. And so in law enforcement, we are looking for people who are people of integrity. So even if you've done something wrong, just own it. And then talk to the background investigator about this incident. And it may not be anything, but once you intentionally do not put it on the application, you have basically iced yourself out of a job. How can I, and I'm the one who will, I'm not the only one, but it'll come to me. And how can I say yay to this person if they intentionally left something off, and I'm looking for someone who has integrity? And so every person I talk to, doesn't matter, black, white, it doesn't matter. I always tell them, on your background, please put everything on there. Everything that you can remember. It is very important. You do not want to be labeled as deceptive, because they might say, oh, I was just shamed. Well, we needed it on there. So that's the biggest thing, is not putting things on there, and drug use, because you can find drugs everywhere now. So, but it's still illegal. Marijuana.
As I was a background investigator, when I worked as a background investigator, I noticed a lot of candidates that failed to apply for the, what's it called? Once you turn 18, you have to.
The draft?
Yeah.
Selection.
What is it called?
Selective services.
Selective services. And a lot, and it was just innocently, but you're supposed to know this. They're supposed to know these things, right? And a lot of them were not aware that they were supposed to do this, so a lot of them were disqualified for not applying for that, okay? There's some because they failed to be dishonest on their applications, and I'm sitting there and I'm telling them, word verbatim, whatever you do, tell the truth. Write it down, don't skip it, don't write whatever, no, read it carefully, read the fine print. And they still come up, and I know that they're being dishonest about them because I have their reports, I have everything for them, and I said, is there something on here that that you want to look over again? I go, look again, anything on that page, and I'll give you to that page. Look and see anything that you failed to answer. This is no, ma'am, everything is correct. Okay, so what about this day, this and this, domestic violence, bad credit? Those are things that'll keep you from getting a job in law enforcement. Bad credits, felonies, depending, if you even though DUI is a misdemeanor, depending how long you had your we may let you slide on your first DUI. But other than more than that, obviously they're not going to hire you for that. So it's just surprising. A lot of them don't have the GED, don't have a high school diploma. They, a lot of them can't write. So it's an issue, and I tell them, you go to school, take a writing class, whatever, to better yourself. If you really want to become a law enforcement officer, these are the things you have to do. Some take the advice, some don't. But I don't know.
It's an old adage that in the profession, if you lie, you die.
Exactly.
And
I see it.
It's I definitely I get them pretty much after they've gone through the hiring process. There's sometimes I get them, they put themselves through, but I hold the same structure at the academy. If you're lying here, you're gone. I boot them because I have to hold the standard, because if you're lying about the little things, when the big things come that you can kind of sneak and try to get away with and get over on people on, you'll lie about that. So you know what? I'm gonna save your department a lot of money and training and time and effort, and you're dismissed. So yeah, I hold to that as well.
For years, I was a background investigator for my former agency, and in my initial meeting, before they even got their background packet, just like Assistant Sheriff Carter said, we had full, very extensive conversation, because your background packet is a display of your writing skills, your competency, whether you're going to be thorough, all of that. And we tell them, don't leave any line blank. Answer every single question, don't leave any line blank. If it doesn't apply to you, put not applicable. You know, tell the truth. And if you're going to submit this application and list all of the people that like you, I promise you there are some people on that list who are gonna think it's funny to have your friend Joe or Jane or whomever from way back when you were a knucklehead, they're gonna provide that number and have that person contact us as well, or we're gonna be able to contact them. So it's better to just be transparent, tell the truth, write everything out as it is, and allow the agency to make the determination as to whether or not that's something that they can move forward with or not. You know, but if you eliminate it or don't say anything about it, then that's an exclusion. So then you'll be excluded from the process. So that led into, have hiring standards changed over the past 5 years in terms of everything that we've been talking about in backgrounds and whatnot at different agencies. I know some agencies have kind of lightened up on their, some of their standards. They still meet the post standards, but has that been a reflection on any of your agencies, or you have any feedback on that?
We've changed a little bit in the last year, especially with it deals with like marijuana. A lot of times the marijuana was the thing that was, could get people out, and there was new legislation that just came out earlier this year in regards to marijuana being okay outside of working, which was strange to us in law enforcement because we've been doing this for a while and nothing was okay. So, the standards in general are changing as it relates to California. And so, it is a different standard. I don't want to say it's a lower standard, but I'm saying the standard has changed a little bit with the communities that we are serving, because we did find out, that was another reason people were being disqualified. And we'll see, it's just, that's something new. So we haven't seen what the effect will be yet. I haven't seen anyone say they came to the job smelling like weed or anything like that. So far so good. But I think the standards have changed a little bit. But we also then have SB2, which is something that is there to combat all of what was happening. And SB2 was legislation that came out where if you have been deemed even if you're in the process, but if you are an officer or a deputy and you lie, you're dishonest, or you have excessive force, we send that information to Post, and Post can actually take away your certification where you cannot be in law enforcement anymore. So although the standards may be changing, even if somebody decides they want to be dishonest or abuse their power or have excessive force, we still have things in place to combat that.
And that's the scary thing when we change our requirements, or because we can look at it, for example, excessive force. Sometimes some of those excessive force are legit, some aren't. Like I said, the media puts out there what they want you to see, and that makes it seem like it's excessive force, but you didn't see what happened that took place, why that officer had to do it, had to use excessive force. To have someone take a look and see if I can still hold my job because of my excessive force, you questioning my excessive force, someone outside of my agency that really has not done my job, it doesn't understand, and I haven't seen it, I don't know. I have different views about that, and it's alarming how we choose to change our requirements because of what our community, what society is saying about law enforcement. And I just think that And just because of a few bad apples, we have to change everything because of those few bad apples. So, and you see how the crime is going on today, and this is why, because they know they can get away with this, because they're taking the power out of law enforcement today, in my opinion. This is my opinion, this is what I see. The power is more with the criminals than there are law enforcement today, because of what is being said in the media, and what our communities are doing about it. Just like the issue of black on black crime, separate. We have all these complaints about in the community how the police is brutalizing and killing our people, but we don't hear anything on the media about black on black crime. Why is not that an issue? And it should be more. We should talk about that a lot more than what it is, because it's a double standard. It's okay when we do it, but once someone of another race does it, it's an issue. And why is that?
Well, I just want to make one thing, excessive force. Now, I don't believe excessive force is ever good. So
No, I don't believe it either, but sometimes you have to. I mean, if you're law enforcement.
It's just the force that's necessary.
Well, yeah.
So I just want to make sure we are all on the same standard.
I'm sure you guys knew what I meant. I
Oh,
hope you
no,
did. I hope you did.
I just want to make sure everybody.
Well, most of our law enforcement, and maybe the community doesn't. Well, you know what I mean. Sometimes excessive force, the guy's fighting you and resisting the rest, trying to take your gun. You got to do whatever it takes to restrain them, and that's just the way it is.
So piggybacking on that, even though that I don't believe that was one of my questions in here, but I do want to talk about body worn cameras and the training for body worn cameras and the perception of the public and law enforcement in terms of having to wear them and activate them.
I love body worn cameras. I think body worn cameras was one of the best things that we could have done. Remember, I came from BART, and at BART I was there when Oscar Grant was killed, and we didn't have body worn cameras at the time. And from that time period, my whole life changed at BART, because it was a good old boys department, and then we had an overhaul. We had a great chief that was there, and he brought body worn cameras, and of course there was resistance because it was new and we didn't know. We thought, oh, they're just trying to catch us. But once people understood that it worked both ways, when the community sees that, they have their phones and they're like, you guys, I have my phones on, I'm watching you, and I'm like, I got mine on too, so we're okay. It just captures more of the information that is going on, and I'm hoping that our officers and deputies understand that the body worn cameras is going to help. Now, we still have people. When I was at BART, I'm not talking about where I'm at now, but when I was at BART and we had the body worn cameras and they turned them on, you still have people that would misbehave, because that is who they are, right? It's like when people fair evaded, and they fair evade every day, and they thought, I guess it was okay now. And when you stop them, they would ask, why are you stopping me? Well, you did a crime, you fair evaded. But they said, I do this every day. Well, it's still not right. It's still not right. And so, even though we double tapped and turned on the cameras, if a person did those type of things all the time. Oh, fair evade is, when you jump over the fare gates and you don't want to pay your fare at BART to ride the train.
It's inside language.
I'm sorry. But if an officer, uses certain language all the time, and now he or she is forced to do that with their body worn camera on, because that's who they are, they forget that they turn the thing on themselves and they catch themselves, up. But it's important that we have that, because we don't need the bad apples in law enforcement, and we could possibly help retrain certain people. Not everybody has to be, got rid of. There are some people that can be salvageable, but we have to find out about it. I encourage people all the time, if you feel like you've been disrespected, talked to wrong, let us know. You can go to IA, which is Internal Affairs. You have DPA, that's Department of Police Accountability. You have the IG now, the OIG, the AG. There's so many different whistleblowers. There's so many places you can go to just tell your side of the story. That way we could look at it and figure out, is there some there? Sometimes people just have a bad day and we can figure that out. But if it's something that 5 or 6 people every month is saying you did something wrong, there's a light bulb that flies, and we as supervisors and the leaders of law enforcement have to take that seriously. So body-worn cameras are an awesome tool for the community as well as law enforcement.
So are they also, sometimes I'm asking this question, I know the answer, but at our agency as well, when there was a citizen's complaint or whomever else complained, as long as we had the footage, we could review the footage and we could go back and say, you know, come back to our agency, we'd like to show you something. Is this what happened? And then the person will either say yes or no, or they'd be like, well, because if you're wrong, you're wrong. Right is right, wrong is wrong, and you're not going to change what's on the video. If you misbehaved on the video, it's going to display that. If the officer or the deputy or whomever was out of line, it's going to display that. So the truth is going to be told on that video. So a lot of times the deputies or whomever were absolved of any wrongdoing because the video showed right there that you just spit on this person, or you just, whatever it is that you did. So it's a good way for checks and balances on both ends.
I remember when body-worn cameras were coming into being. I mean, especially in this county. I remember when it first started like rolling out, and really across the country, because like I said, I go to a lot of conferences and teach and stuff, and oh man, law enforcement was in an uproar. Oh my gosh, you would have thought that they was gonna start drug testing everybody that day. If law enforcement was in an uproar when body-worn cameras started to be the industry norm. And I always thought that it was a great thing because it keeps everybody honest. It keeps everybody on point. That me as a law enforcement officer, that means I better know my stuff now because it's gonna be challenged, right? And then for the victim or maybe the suspect, it's also gonna be a truth teller for them because now the public is gonna see why I had to use force to do what I needed to do because you were resisting. So it keeps everybody honest. I want everything on camera. Everything on, let's just put it all out in the open. Has always been my attitude. One thing that you said that really is important, what it also does with the camera, like if you do have, like say the victim or the person that wants to do an IA complaint, if you have them come back to the department, this is a time to educate them. I don't think we do a great job with educating the community on the things that we can educate them on. Some stuff we got to keep on our end for tactical advantage and things like that, but we don't do a good enough job with educating the community on why we do things the way we do and how we move and why we're doing this. I honestly believe if we did that a lot better and we did that more, we wouldn't have so much pushback that we get. There's a reason why this officer may have their hand on their firearm while they're approaching your car, because the numbers tell us that that's one of the most dangerous times for an officer out in the field is when they're doing car stops, right? There's a reason why this officer did that. And I think we need to do a much better job of educating the community on why we move the way we move, because that would release a lot of tension that's there, because they just don't know. When you don't know, you make up your own stories on why things are the way they are. But we have to do a much better job. The camera is definitely one way of doing that. I'm so glad that came to be body-worn cameras. So,
But here's one negative thing about it that we just found out, and that's at the sheriff's office. They've been asking like the district attorney for all the body-worn cameras. Like, not everything is caught on tape.
Yes.
Something bad could have, the incarcerated person may have done something and wasn't caught, but they still need to be charged. But because we got so used to body-worn cameras, now they want it on tape. Well, we didn't capture it on tape. We still want you to process it. So
Exactly.
we're having, we have to somehow have the balance too to understand not everything is on tape. And to your point about media and SVU, and I love those shows, but I get so upset because it's not reality. And sometimes I believe my community members think I could just shoot somebody in their, pinky, and they're like, why didn't you just shoot them in the hand? Where did you get that from? Like, we have to educate them on why we do the things we do, because we do ourselves a disservice when we allow media and the shows that we see to say that that is the truth, and it is not.
Okay, so here's one that's gonna light all of you guys up. Under what circumstances would you support the creation of an independent oversight body to monitor and review law enforcement agencies' policies and practices, and what should be the limits of its power?
I already know that. I've come to two. Came from BART, remember? So we have that, and our sheriff department, we just got that. I have no problem with it. I promise you. I think the more transparent that we are in law enforcement, the better we will have a relationship with the community. So, to your point about body-worn cameras, if we're not doing anything wrong,
Right.
what difference does it make? So, I don't have a problem with an independent person telling you how amazing my department is. Awesome, great, and working with them. Now, do I want them to have the power over my sheriff or the chief? No, I do not, because we are law enforcement, and a lot of times we would have to educate them on what we do. They don't know that, but they do give us eyes and a voice to say what the community may have, what they're seeing, what their perception is, and it gives us a gauge on how we can educate or work together and figure things out. So I definitely think they should be there and have a voice, but not to take over.
Yeah. When you said oversee, I was kind of like, well, not oversee. Work with? Yeah, maybe not oversee.
That's why I said right you all.
Yeah, not oversee, but work with, absolutely. I think that's important. I completely agree. I think a lot of people forget, the military doesn't just work on its own in our government. Who oversees the military are a bunch of civilians in the White House and in Congress and the Senate. And then there's a push and pull there, right? And so it could work. It could definitely work, and I agree. I agree with the sheriff.
Where do we draw the line in balancing freedom of information with a citizen's right to be protected from any invasion of privacy?
It's got to be a fine balance, right? I mean, privacy is very, very important. That's what we're based on in the United States, is having privacy. But we also have to look at the totality of what's going on in the public. I have no problem if in technology, we talk about 21st century policing, and one of the pillars of 21st century policing is technology, but using it in a way that is not harmful to society. Like license plate readers, I hear a lot of backlash on license plate readers, right? And it's just a great tool to catch people who are stealing cars. Carjackers normally have weapons. They may have children in the car. It's a great tool to use when done responsibly. So I feel like we can have a great balance if we discuss it. It's not something we should do on our own. It has to be like with the board of supervisors or the community leaders, that we come together and have parameters where we can use them in a way that's responsibly. That we're not just we're using it to catch some major criminal activity that's happened. Now, I don't want you to stop me because I jaywalked and then, use the license plate reader for that. But there has to, it could be used in a way where it has requirements and parameters, and that could be done with the community.
And also in terms of freedom of information, I know there's a Freedom of Information Act with the media and whatnot, and they want to know everything. They want every nook and cranny and detail of investigations. And oftentimes they don't understand that until an investigation is complete, you don't get that. How do you all work with that? How do you all balance that? What do you do?
I think it's like what you just said. You tell them, it's the safety of the public, it's the safety of the officers.
And integrity investigation
Yeah.
too.
I've never agreed with, I don't believe that the media should know and be privy to every single thing. It goes along with what you guys were just saying as well. I don't agree with putting officers' names out there that are part of certain types of investigations, because it can heavily endanger the lives of officers, especially if they're not. Now, if it's something criminal and they've been convicted or something like that, different story, right? You do the crime, you do the time, you gotta pay the piper, right? But who's the officer that shot X, Y, Z? Why do you need to know who the officer, their name and address and who they? No. I will say something on the in terms of technology, because the sheriff brought up something about license plates readers and things of that nature. The community has to understand that these things are created and made to keep them safe. I don't know why people think that this would be, or a red light, the camera. You remember when those first came out? People were in an uproar. Like, nobody wants to be held accountable. Like,
Exactly.
how is this? Where are we at? Like, like why? Like, why don't you want things that are going to make the society safer, so that your children don't have to worry about getting ran over, or that we won't be having all these flagrant sideshows and hurting people? Or why wouldn't you want license plate readers? Something when I was driving in today, something that you'll probably ask a question about this, segue into it, because that got on my nerves, because I'm listening to talk radio, and there's a community that they're taking away shot spotters out of communities. Now, if you don't know what shot spotters are, that lets law enforcement know when gunshots are fired, and they're typically placed in high crime areas and things of that nature. So shots are fired, law enforcement can respond right to that location for the most part. This community, which is a very high crime community, they're doing away with all shot spotters. And some of the so-called activist reasoning is that when police arrive, the response that police give to the community, their interaction with the community, could be violent. It wasn't just violent, just not, like, what are you talking about? Like you're arguing that it could become violent, but it was already just violent. That's why they're there, and it's just backwards thinking to me, that the community, they're creating their own desert of crime. They're creating their own island of crime. They're creating their own island of crime with doing away with these things, and many of these so-called activists, not all, but many of these so-called activists, they're making bad decisions. And I wonder, I'm like, are these the drug dealers, like, making these, are they trying to, like, disguise themselves as activists to try to get these things out that are really going to help and contribute to the well-being of the community? It's just, so I was upset when I was driving. I was like, who wants to get rid of ShotSpotter? It's for you. And then the flip side of that, lives are saved too when police arrive on the scene, because now they can put tourniquets on. They could help plug up the holes that the person just got shot. I don't know, but sometimes the community, they're creating their own, like I said, island of crime under the guise of, we're trying to save lives. You're not.
I want to counter that a little bit as a community member, as a woman, a black woman, right? Because I was thinking, even when I said the license plate readers, then I start thinking about Ferguson and what they did in that area where the police officers were stopping a black community who was poor. Overwhelmingly giving them all these they were driving, these tickets, and they couldn't pay for it, and if they tried to go, then they would have to get arrested. They couldn't vote. It was like a big thing over something small like license plate readers. So even as I'm talking about it,
it can be abused. Absolutely.
It was abused, right? And so we have to also, since it is talking about minorities and law enforcement today, we have to talk about why the community would not want those things. Why don't they want us in the communities? it saddens me to think that they would rather have somebody shot dead in the street than have me come to help them. But there's something in the community that they hurt so bad that they would rather suffer than have me come and help them. And that saddens me. And that's why the work has to continue, first off. So yes, with license plate readers, shot spotters, body worn cameras, these things are to help the community, but the voice, we still have to keep somehow, signaling that to them and making sure that it's equitable, that it's not just, black folks getting all these tickets, where everything is equitable when we use these type of tools so that it helps everyone out.
Okay, I'm gonna ask probably maybe one more question and then I'll open it up if you all have any questions for the panel. How has new legislation regarding the prosecution of law enforcement professionals in the course of their duties, for their actions in the course of their duties, impacted the performance of current law enforcement professionals that are still working, recruitment efforts, and any significant agency policy changes or procedural changes?
Well, I can definitely tell you that with all of that's going on, with people, possibly losing their houses, going to jail, again, folks don't want to be in law enforcement anymore. It's become too much on one end, right? When people are just doing their job. I mean, the scrutiny is there, and like I told you, I have no problem being scrutinized. You can have the citizens, people looking oversight and all of that. But when a person is just doing their job and they do it well, people may not want the outcome, they may not like what it looks like, but when they have effected the job and they have done well, to even think about having to, that your liberties might be taken away, folks don't want to be in law enforcement anymore. So we're losing good people. We have people in our department that may not want to put hands on people because they feel like if I touch this person, I could lose my job. And so I've noticed a tick in our deputies getting hurt.
Yes,
because they're slowing down instead of using these tools are to be used for a purpose. I'm not putting 20 pounds around my waist because I like it. If I need to use one of these tools, I need to use one of these tools. And I need to be okay in my mind to say I'm going to use it. When you second guess yourself, lives can be taken. Your life, another person's life next to you. And so we do not want our law enforcement to second guess themselves, but that is what's happening because of it, because of what's going on. Now, I also think everyone needs to be held accountable.
Yes.
But we are going so far to one side that we're losing a lot of people, and people are getting hurt because of it.
And there's a lot of officers that I know of, they're just waiting for the time to retire. They said, I'm not gonna do anything because if I lose my job, I'm worried about losing my pension. So the criminals they can do whatever they want. If I do something, I'm gonna end up on administrative leave, or they just say, I don't care anymore. Basically, their attitude is, I don't care, just give me another year or two and I'm gone. And that's a horrible attitude to have. But this is what's going on today in our society,
It's very disheartening. I hear it a lot. I hear it a lot in terms of officers just aren't being a lot more proactive with their policing because they're just scared of charges being brought up against them, and it could just derail their whole career. It's very disheartening. I think that it's going to take some time, a lot of time, not even some, for this to turn around. Although there's been some good things legislatively and regulation-wise that law enforcement has needed, that has come to be, but on the back end, there's just a lot there that has tied the hands of a lot of law enforcement officers that are current and discouraged them from really doing their job at a high level. And some of that, again, goes to the reason why the public voted and pushed for things the way they did is because I believe we did a terrible job at educating them on why we do the things that we do. If we did that a lot better, it would take some of the sting out. Now it's always going to be like, I don't even like getting pulled over. Nobody likes getting pulled over and being held accountable, right? Like, I mean, even law enforcement officers don't like that. But it has to happen, right? And so what they've done is they, like to what you were saying, Paselka, over here, is it really has shifted things a lot into the community members' hands and tied law enforcement hands a lot with things that they were more apt to do proactively before, and now they're a lot more apprehensive. Quick example, because I don't want to. I grew up in a time in Oakland, in East Oakland, in the 80s and 90s. I grew up in a time where sometimes when I talk to my friends, I'm like, man, I don't know how we survived during that era in East Oakland. I really don't know how we survived because it was bad. It was the height. It was the crack era, height of that whole era. However, there were certain lines and boundaries that you didn't cross. I'll give you a prime example. Sideshows have been around forever. Growing up, we went to them from time to time, but here's the difference. When we saw Alameda County Sheriff's lights, or we saw an unmarked car, which was OPD's task force at the time, they were called the task force, it's time to get out of Dodge. Because your car is getting towed, or you're going to jail. Bad things could have happened. You might have got roughed up if you mouthed off. So I'm not condoning that by no means. But those are things that can be corrected, with good leadership and correction. But there was a somewhat of a healthy respect in line with law enforcement. I knew things had went awry when I was away in college, and I saw some stuff about the sideshow on the news in Oakland, and I saw people jumping on CHP cars, throwing stuff at Alameda County, at the sheriff. That never, you knew if that would have, that's when I knew things had just gone awry, because there was no respect there anymore. Done. The respect is gone, and things have just gone awry. And I say that all to say like that we have to bring that pendulum back. I think things did go overboard. There was some things with like the Oakland rioters, that there was some bad things that went on, but that stuff can be that stuff can be eradicated. But you don't neuter law enforcement and think that crime and bad behavior is going to change with just hugs. Sometimes people don't play nice in the sand pit, and we got a place for you for that. And we need to put you there for a time till you learn your lesson, and then maybe we'll let you out. But we can't neuter law enforcement so much that the respect line is off. The respect line is off. And unfortunately, we've gone so far, like you were saying, Sheriff, to whatever side, to the right or the left, always whatever those sides are, but we've gone too far to one side. And unfortunately, and people don't like to hear this, it's going to take a heavy hand now to move things back, because people, once they get stuck in this behavior, and once that snowball gets rolling, it's hard as heck to try to bring that pendulum back. It's going to take time. It's going to take so much time for us to recover for the deficits of law enforcement officers leaving, retiring early because they're just fed up with the job. The recruiting measures are just so woefully down. I mean, they can't find, because of the bad press, because of the bad information, because of the bad news that was given, and nobody wants to be in the profession anymore. And it is a noble profession. I always call it, I say it's God's work. Like, it's a noble, great profession to be in, but we've been painted with such a bad brush. It's going to take some time to recover from it. We will, right? But it's going to take some time to recover from it, and we just got to do a better job with flying that flag of this is something that you need to get into, and the community, we need their support in that. Like, it's crazy. Yeah, you won't believe it. There's a group of people that just think that if we did away with all the law enforcement, the community would just right itself. Like, things would. Yeah, tell me how that works, Seattle. Exactly. Like, when did it really work for you when they were murdering people? Like, So I digress.
Do Do any of you have any questions for the panel in terms of law enforcement training or whatever your question may be? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. Businesses are leaving the area because they feel they can't survive. They're being looted. And it's my understanding, I've been a resident of San Mateo County for a million years, as you can see by my age. But what I would say is, I remember when Sequoia Station first started, I was in law enforcement, and we were all excited that it was Sequoia Station. It was clean, and it was fun. Now I dread going to the drugstore because there's fights and bombs, and law enforcement doesn't seem to be doing anything about it. So I just like your insight on that.
Well, I know, let's just say something. I notice there's a lot, it's a priority now. Those things right now with the home,
And how?
Thank you. Thank you for being politically correct here, okay.
Both.
It's a low priority now, so that, because they're short staffed, that they don't have enough officers to go attend to most of the things that we're used to. You know, so now this, you know, they're just looking at felony crimes, you know, not even that, I mean, violent crimes, you know, so, you know, like burglaries and people breaking in homes, that's a low priority now, you know, so.
It's so funny because I'm at my church. I'm gonna tell all my business. So we have some incidents going on at my church, right, on the Sunday. So I call the police because they know who I am. So I called the emergency number. I was on the phone for like 7 minutes. I was like, this is the emergency number.
Oh, no.
So I text my friend, I'm on call with your people. Can you get somebody over here?
It's terrible.
But it's true, what you're saying is like, right now, the priorities are so, have to be for, you know, like ongoing serious crimes that everything has shifted. We're low staff. People feel, and there's legislation like in San Francisco, we can't move the unsheltered, unhoused people even if we wanted to because of laws that say no, right? So we have to follow the mandates just like everybody else. And people don't realize that either. They're like, why don't you take care of that? What exactly did you want me to, you know, to do? Because the mandates.
Right.
And it does
That
talk.
they voted for.
Oops, yes. And it's all really about education too, because just the other day, like this woman wanted somebody, I think, to be arrested. And, you know, as officers, we have to dig in deeper of exactly what was the crime, we weren't here, or you want to make a citizen's arrest. Those things are important. And so it really takes us to working together, educating one another, understanding what the community needs, understanding what we can do to push forward. But to your point, sir, I'm with you right there. I was calling too, but it's all about priorities.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
The educational component. When I was a kid, I'm 65 years old now, but sheriffs, police, and even fire people used to come into the school. So you're talking about getting them when they're young. And I was wondering if you guys do that. I do see them setting the pop-up stuff at the colleges, the junior colleges, and I see them setting the pop-up stuff on the street. I was wondering if you guys do go into school with the elementary kids and talk to them as you talk to us.
For the sheriff's department, we have a community engagement team now. It's part-time, and even before that, I have a wonderful captain. He's been going into the schools like very regularly. Now we're doing more with our community engagement team. That's the type of person I am anyway, so, you know, I tag on with that. I'm part of this group called Noble, and so we do a 2-hour presentation for young people. We do it in the schools and the churches, and we talk about how to keep our young people safe, because our young people think because they're teenagers, they can just walk away too, and it's like, no, you can't, you know, so we want to teach them how to be safe. Right now, some of our community engagement teams took a group with SFPD over to HBCU in Oakland right now, so they have about 80 kids over there, hopefully getting scholarships and you know, getting pulled to go to school. But you're right, it really starts at, even younger, I always say it starts younger than high school, elementary school.
Elementary, yeah.
We really, yeah, we have to go to the elementary schools, and I wear this uniform today, even though you said we could wear regular clothes, because it's important for people to see us in uniform, not to be afraid of me in the uniform. I want them to identify that I'm okay, even in this uniform.
So when I first came in and I saw you, I thought, that's Angela Bassett, better looking Angela Bassett. The stars on the thing, and everything.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
In reference to what you're speaking about, we have an air program, we'll give them more grade. They also have a program for high school kids. That, I had 2 kids that was in that program. And they were involved.
PAL, was it PAL? Police Activity League? Yeah, we have something called the Junior Deputy Program that we have as well. And before I forget, I wanted to acknowledge my lieutenant who's here, Lieutenant Collins. She's looking around like she don't know me. and Miss Serena, who's standing up, who came to just cheer me on. I want to thank them both publicly for always supporting me while I'm here right now. But yeah, to your Junior Deputy Program, we do that. They're from 7 to I think 18 years old, and they do marches. We make them do a little mini boot camp, because the goal is that we now have to really start shepherding our own group of people that we want and can take over. When I leave law enforcement, I really want to leave it better than when I got here, and I can only do that if I put key people in places. So if I have to homegrown and grow our own, law enforcement, group of people, I'll know for sure that they are squared away, because we have poured into them, and we can leave them knowing that they will grow law enforcement to be better. So it's really important that we tap them at a younger age.
I would say, in addition to that, I know that at the academy, I've started doing a program with the daycare on our campus. It's I call it like a public safety day. And so I have the kids, all the little kiddies, they march over, it's like about 20 of them, and all the recruits are dressed up in their law enforcement attire, and they do like a little dog and pony show. They jump over the wall, they're showing them that this is something that they want to do and that they can do. I've had the director for the daycare. A lot of those children, those young children, are immigrant children. And they've had terrible experiences with law enforcement. And she has often told me, I never thought that I would see X, Y, and Z run up and hug. They'll run up and hug you. And so it's funny that you said that you want the children to run to you, because that's what I always say. I want them to run towards us when chaos is happening, not running away from us. So we have to prime them at the early age for that. Oh, the second point I was going to say is one of the things that the community, say it nicely, how the community and their geniusness kind of hurt themselves. They pushed to have SROs out of schools. That was
SROs are school resource
officers. So basically a law enforcement officer that's trained specifically for schools. So that view and vision of law enforcement as being someone that they could talk to and work with and do things of that nature is almost gone, because they pushed for that. The community voted that, and now maybe they didn't know the ramifications of what would happen by doing this. We did, because we were saying, wait, no, you don't want to take us out of schools. Another example of that would be, hey, I know you guys voted for this early prison release type program thing. Because the California prisons are overcrowded and things of that nature. They thought that violent criminals wouldn't be released. But what they didn't read the fine print, it says by the last crime. So I can still be a violent criminal, but if I stole this water and I went to jail, when this new law came out, my last crime was that I stole water, so I'm not a violent criminal. No, man, you murdered like 5 people just like 2 years ago. But they didn't read the fine print. And so now you have all of this chaos and decisions that the community made that's now showing, it's rearing its head now. It's bad, and the reason why I brought that up was the time frame that I grew up, because I think that it's worse now in the communities than it was when I grew up. And like I said, I grew up in the East Oakland, Deep East, in the crack era, and there was definitely crime. It was bad, but again, there was a line. We knew. If I saw the sheriff, if I'm telling you, Alameda County didn't play at that time. The sheriffs didn't play, right? And OPD didn't play, especially the task force. If you saw them unmarked cars, you better run. You better get going. All nonsense stops. And that's not there. And some of this, the community, law enforcement has a responsibility. Absolutely, we should be held accountable. I am firm with that. But the community, you gotta accept some responsibility for the legislation and the regulations that you put into play. Because law enforcement can only do what you regulate and what you legislate. That's it, right? And so we gotta work together to bring this back to some equilibrium, I guess you could say. We gotta work together to bring that back, because we are you and you are us. There's no separation with the two. But we gotta work together with that. We gotta work together.
Are there any other questions, comments, or anything? Yes.
For Amanda, do you think there are enough women in position of leadership in law enforcement? And if not, why not? What can we do to change it?
Got better. Yeah.
No, we can always use more. We can always use more women in law enforcement. Remember, in law enforcement, there's literally only, it's such a small percentage when you look at the bigger picture of it. So yes, in my department, 2 out of 3 of us are women in the top, echelon. However, we are not what the whole law enforcement is. In fact, I was speaking to someone yesterday in regards to women sheriffs themselves, because there was some major city event this past weekend, and she said out of the 70 people that were there, only 7 were women that were in leadership roles, and that's like what, 1%? So there is room to grow. To your, yes, we are definitely getting better. Keep plugging this. This is for everyone. We have to do. We don't have to, but we should. We do things like this, women, women conferences, because we need to support one another and figure out ways where we can help push and challenge each other to move forward. We don't know that we can be in these roles until we start seeing people in these roles. I didn't know that I could be a sergeant until someone came along and said, you would make a great sergeant. I was like, what? Because I was just raising my daughter, just doing my thing, right? And no one at the time at BART, it was a good old boys thing, so I wasn't even considered around anything until, we had a new chief. He brought in new people, and they realized, they were like, wow, she's a great diamond in the rough. No one had taken the time to even plant a seed. So my thing is, in this role, is I'm trying to plant seeds. I try to tell as many women, people of color, I'm being very honest, as possible, because the men are already coming. So I try to tell as many women as possible, you can do this job. You can be better than me. Like I tell my daughter, don't be me, be better than me. You can do it. And so that's what I will be championing until I retire up out of here, is letting women know that they can be the sheriff, they can be the chief. Whatever they want to do, they can do it. But it takes us breaking the barriers and and mentoring and celebrating one another. I think women sometimes we are a little catty, because there's not enough room at the top. For men, there's so many different avenues where they can go. But if you only have one seat at the top for a woman, we all have to vie for this one seat that you allow us to have. We are going to be that way to one another. Instead of us saying, no, we don't have to do this, we can take that, we can take that. And it's coming together. So there's room for improvement. It's getting better because we're talking about it more. And so it is being looked at, it's being researched. People are making the leap to become chiefs and whatever they want to be. But it's still a ways to go.
Do we have any other questions from anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Officer Wellness, can you talk to me a little bit about that?
I can tell, actually, last week, we lost someone who retired because they committed suicide. Officer wellness for law enforcement is rough because people don't want to talk about how stressful it is to be in law enforcement. That it's the shame that people feel like that they can't talk about it. That's the hard part, right? Where we, as law enforcement, we're supposed to be so tough that we don't want to discuss those things that happen in our lives or whatever's going on, and we decide that it's just best to let it go. It is very stressful. Every day, even dispatchers, you figure people call, not to say hello, but they call to say something happened, right? No one is calling law enforcement to say you did a great job, but there's always something that you have to go to or go through. Even in my job, I'm not out on the street anymore, but because I'm hooked up to a phone, every time that little thing beeps, you just freak because no one's calling you to say, hey, how you doing, Assistant Sheriff? Something has happened, and there's always something. So your body, for years, 20 years, you're just like this the whole time. And then a lot of times when you retire, it's like, where is all that energy that has been moving around? Where is it going, right? So for us, we have been very intentional. Of course, everyone has like EAP, I think that's Employee Assistance Program. We have chaplains now, we have peer support, we have mental health clinicians, and they're the ones who know more about law enforcement so that they can talk to people of like mind. But again, we can have as much as possible laid out. Unless people go to it, it doesn't matter. So our focus has to be to say it's okay to get help. It's okay to get help, and we're still doing that in law enforcement, but it's hard because a lot of people do not want to tell what's going on.
Well, I don't want to put you on the spot, but
Go ahead.
since you used to work where I used to work, and we had a peer support program, can you talk a little bit about that? You can beat me up
You
later.
mentioned officer wellness, so I just retired from the sheriff's office in 2018 in corrections, and I was one of the peer support people in the department. And then what we would do is we would try to support someone that was in need. Sometimes they would come to you and talk to you, and a lot of the public, we talk about the public and the public's eye on law enforcement, they don't realize I tell everyone they think law enforcement officers are superheroes, but they carry a load at the same time. So you have to do a lot of stress at work, then you have to go home and you have to be able to shut that off, that law enforcement roll off. Now you have to try to be a family person, and sometimes officers have a hard time with that. And yes, sometimes the drinking comes in, excessive spending of money, calling in sick, and then like Chair, what you said is again is true, is that I don't want to tell him my problems, even though I have a problem. I don't want anybody to know. I gotta be strong. Eventually something breaks. Either you get in trouble by using excessive force, or come to work drunk. And I've seen that happen. So yeah, or they start using drugs. So it's tough, and you can't get the help unless you open up. And some people it's really hard for them to open up. They can really mask that. Those true feelings very easy. But there are programs that are out there for those who need help. And I've had it when I talked to a guy for almost a year, and then all of a sudden I got a phone call, he hung himself. And I didn't see it coming. I saw the other things coming that caused his problem, his pain. But you know, if that person doesn't want any help, they're gonna let go. They take the easy way out, but it hurts everybody else. And then on top of that, peer support, it affects everybody. So if someone's family members passed away, because you become close with your coworkers, it's like an extended family. And if my mom or someone passed away, somebody will come talk to me a little bit. But it has to get better. Just not too long ago, we were working through several weeks of 4 or 5 officers. What the San Diego area, LA area, like 24 hours. Yeah, it just highway patrol had a problem. It's there, but a lot of the departments are opening up more and more. But then again, it's who wants to help, who wants to accept it.
Thank you.
I'm done.
No, I appreciate it.
The landscape has gotten better in terms of departments even offering the programs. Like every department just about now has a wellness program or something for officers. That's a major mind shift right there from what it used to be. However, here's the next leap that I've been trying to push for the longest. Your car would break down on you if you never got an oil change or a checkup after 2 or 3 years. The brain is the same way in this type of profession. If you don't mandate, it needs to be mandated that officers are going to go see a competent mental health person to have their oil checked, to have a tune-up. Let's do some recalibration, because the job within itself, the nature of the job, the experiences and the traumas that you come in contact with over time is no different than someone being in Fallujah or in Iraq and the battle. They just get it all at once. Law enforcement gets a little here over a period of 20 years, 30 years, your career. So the imprinting of the trauma is massive. And you may not notice it the first few years, but what you see it at is when you do retire. The average is like 16 paychecks, I want to say, around there before you like have a heart attack or you're going to kill yourself. Somewhere around that line. That's generally like around the average, right? So we know that it wreaks havoc because it can be a hard job, right? And so the trauma that you experience, it has to be dealt with, and people don't want to get help unless they have to. They don't get it because they need it. They get it when they have to, right? You don't stop speeding until you get your ticket, right? You know, so it has to be mandated. All right, is this group of people's time? I need you to go do your checkup with X, Y, and Z psychologists. All right, to recalibrate something that's non-punitive, something that's not. But if it's not mandated, you can have all the programs in the world. No, law enforcement is hard-headed. Look, let me tell you. This is the reason why we lead in divorces. Is that we hard-headed. We don't want to listen. Don't want to listen to nobody, right? So there is a reason. But if you don't mandate it, it's great that we have the programs there. Like I said, it was enough getting all that stuff implemented. Now the next leap is everybody has to go. I'm talking about from the sheriff on down, because see, then it takes away the stigma. You can't be like, oh man, you have to go to the shrink if only a couple of people have to go. No, everybody got to go see the psychiatrist. Now what? From the sheriff, chief on down, everybody gets to go. So now we can't talk about people because it's the norm now. But until we take a serious, hard stance on that, you're not going to see much difference with it, because, like I said, I mean, if somebody really wants to do it, you'll never know. It'll just get done. They'll just do it. They'll just take their own lives.
I don't know if you can mandate something like that.
And that you could, but it's just a matter of the red tape.
HIPAA laws, and also the department can use that against you.
So, yeah.
Something happens. So
there's a way that you can bypass that. It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be punitive. That's why I said it doesn't have to be punitive. But there's a way to work around it.
But believe me, if they know you're going to go see me work in IA, knowing that you have, we mandate and you've gone to this and we have that information, and we're looking to terminate you, we're going to get all that information. because we're tribute to it. So even though it's HIPAA laws, but
Mhm.
we understand.
That's
this
why you
way
make,
to get-
that's why I say you have to put everybody. Everybody goes. You, even you
Yeah.
in IA, you're part of this department, you going too. So
Right.
everybody gets a eval and recalibrated. That way it can't be punitive, and the agreement that you can set with, like I know a department that actually does it, right? So you utilize, everybody gets like a number. The chief doesn't know, nobody knows what number it is. All the department get is a receipt of payment, like, hey, you guys are supposed to pay this. There's no way that you can find out, oh, X, Y, and Z went. There's no way you can find it out. There's ways to work around it. But I agree, if they don't do it right, it can be punitive.
Yes.
But if everybody goes, and they just gotta put some thought to it, because it can be done. But we gotta save us.
Yes.
Because it's an alarming rate. But I'm sorry, I know we gotta go.
I'm the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
So it's just, to me, it seems like it's like the chaplains, right? We have the chaplains and they can talk to whomever they want. I don't know, don't even tell me who you're talking to. And I just want a number each month.
There you
Oh,
go.
I talked to 5 people. Oh, that's wonderful. Because at the end of the day, I want to say, Sheriff, look, the chaplains are viable. They are talking to people. They are being utilized. And no one can go back to say, who did you talk to? That's confidential. So I'm believing that's what you're saying,
Yeah.
that it would be confidential in the same kind of vein. And mandates are good in this because it does take the stigma away. It's like domestic violence. Remember back in the day, women had to say that they wanted to press charges, and then they weren't going to do that, right? But when we took it away and said it's
You
not
going.
even up to you
Yeah,
now,
there you go. Yeah. Somebody going to jail.
You
Yeah.
going to jail,
That's
and
right.
it just makes it so easier for the victim so that we don't put the pressure on them. So to your point, it takes away the fact that we have to put pressure on the people who are sick or who need help to
Oh, it's
say,
happening.
you tell me that that you need the help. They're not going to do that. So if everybody's doing it, then it kind of takes it away. So I get that.
Do you all have any parting words for people?
I just want to say thank you guys for coming out. I'm glad it's not storming right now. I hope it's not storming when we leave up out of here. But I really do appreciate you guys coming out and supporting and just listening to us, right?
Yeah,
Like,
thank
wow,
you.
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for your
Mary,
time.
Joe,
Really
thank you.
appreciate it, and hopefully we'll be doing this again next year. And it'll be bigger and better next year. We'll have more community engagement.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You guys have good points to say.